Well, Dad had just won the European Cup in the May. They'd won the league championship, so they'd got the double, and they'd almost got the treble. They'd lost in the FA Cup final. So that's what Dad was doing. Mum was still teaching in 77. Yeah, she finished 2 years later, and I was just out of uni and living in Derby. One of the researchers came to Derby to see me. I didn't think I could add anything much that Mum couldn't have said, but apparently it was worth him coming. Yeah, it was going to be a midweek game, a Tuesday evening I think it was going to be, and it was going to be filmed on the Wednesday morning. So on the way home, they would have caught Dad on the way home. But then the match was changed for some reason, I don't remember why, and it was moved to a Saturday. So they had to rearrange all the plans and film it on a Saturday evening. And so we got met at the station, the little placard with Thames on it, and then we went to the hotel and were picked up at a certain time to go for rehearsal at the studio that evening, like a script meeting, even though we hadn't got anything to say. And so we all went through that, and then we were taken back to the hotel. And we found out how expensive the bar was. so that's when we decided we had to go and find a pub somewhere that would be a bit cheaper for the next night. So then we went out and found an ordinary pub round the corner, and we thought that would be better when Dad meets all his friends the next night. So we had to go to the studios. We were taken in the car, taxi, whatever, to the studios, and we had to take whatever we were wearing for the evening, because they didn't know if we would be able to get out, and they didn't want people to be seen out. So once you went in, that was it for the day. You got your meals there, and then there was a time, I think, various rehearsals, and then I think they said, you'll get your tea and then you can get changed, because that was sort of the timing for Dad coming in. I suppose we were feeling just quite excited. For us, it was something we'd never done before, and you're sort of anticipating what Dad would feel like, and you knew that he'd enjoy it in the end and he'd like to see everyone, but being the sort of man he was, he'd be a bit embarrassed at first, but it was just exciting to do something like that. On the bus, it didn't take him long to realise it was him that he'd come for. I think, at first he would wonder, and then obviously the penny dropped quite quickly, because he'd done so much. I think embarrassment at first, and I suppose you didn't know what was coming. We were all so proud of what Dad did. So really it was mostly excitement from everybody else. It was funny seeing the players' faces some of the time when some of the guests came. I always remember them laughing when Frank Carr came on. He's got quite big ears, and you could see this ripple all through them. He wouldn't have imagined that Frank Carr would have come all the way from Hong Kong, as he was one of his best friends. That was probably the biggest surprise for him, because he was the furthest away to come to, and he'd got all his family. And I suppose the other thing that he would be surprised about was how everyone had kept it secret. He'd been up to the northeast to show that, because Dad took the cup round, the European Cup round to lots of places, and he drove up to the northeast to show in his hometown of Hattonley Hole, and was surprised when a lot of the old men weren't there to see the cup, and he was probably a bit disappointed, but he saw some people, but the others had been told to keep away so as not to spoil the surprise that would happen a little bit later. His roots in the northeast were always important to him. I mean, he never lost his accent. That was a very important part of his life, that he hadn't gone down the mines. He'd been able to go into football. His dad had let him go become a professional footballer, but he made sure he had the trade behind him of being a bricklayer in case anything happened, that he had something to fall back on. So of course some people were there from that training time, and the army was, that was an important part of his life as well. And of course he'd signed on for Liverpool and then didn't play his first game till after the war because he got called up. So that, in his 20s, that's what he was doing, for 6 years, winning the war with his friend Frank, as is what he used to say. To get that part of his past, and then the players that were on, they obviously had a big admiration for him. You know, they were very fond of him. So he had the right people around. Afterwards, I think he'd be relieved because, as I say, he wasn't one for the limelight. There was an ordinary sort of pub round the corner, and said, "Why don't you go there?" Well, Dad didn't often go in pubs because of the lifestyle. It was more, he might be away in a hotel, but he wasn't one just to pop down to the pub down the road or anything. It wasn't in often enough. But he went in, and he was just amongst all these Geordies, and you could it was just lovely to see them all together, and he was happy to be amongst them, you know, and they just talked as though, you know, there hadn't been all these 40 years between. He was very happy about it all. He wondered what we'd been up to as a family, why all these secrets we'd been keeping from him. But he said something to me as I went on, so it was my fault that he hadn't known about it. But in a joking way, you know, that how I managed to keep a secret for that long. But it was all light-hearted, and I think he enjoyed it in the end. It was a great weekend, really, being involved in finding out how they made a programme like that, all the research that goes into it, and all the amount of secrecy that is involved in it. And so we just had a good time, excited, and enjoyed the whole weekend. It's one of those you don't forget. Actually, on his gravestone, one of the papers, his obituary from one of the Times or the Telegraph or something, and we put it on his headstone, is he remained an ordinary man amidst extraordinary achievements. And it was you know, that's why we picked on that quote, because it was very apt. I suppose it was the same thing with This Is Your Life. You know, he didn't really expect that anyone would want to hear his story, and was probably very proud that anyone had thought to do that for him, because he wouldn't have thought he was the sort of person that should be on it. You know, he never really thought of himself like that. Didn't think of himself as a famous person particularly.